quick disclaimer for this episode. This is a very heavy episode of Brothers on the Board. We're going to be discussing things such as anxiety and depression and talking about some very personal issues that we ourselves have dealt with and kind of how we have dealt with it. I do want to point out that we're not therapists. This is just our experiences and tips and tricks that we've kind of used over the years to kind of deal with it ourselves. And we would like everyone to know that if you or someone you know is dealing with these types of issues, whether it's anxiety, depression, suicidal thoughts, please reach out to the suicide hotline so that you can get help. And that number is 988. Welcome to Brothers on the Board, the podcast where we become better teachers together. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Brothers on the Board. I hope you guys had a fantastic weekend. This is episode 9, and today we are talking about anxiety and depression. So as always, my name's John, and I'm joined here by my brother Wes. We are two people who just enjoys helping people, and we think that this topic in particular is something that a lot of people could use help with. So, Wes, you and I have been known to be a couple of sad little people in our lives. We've been through the gambit, and you know it's one of those things where you don't realize how many people are dealing with it until you start talking about it. Have you kind of experienced the same thing there?
Absolutely. Yeah. So I deal with more like anxiety. We're going to get into a little bit of talking about depression and anxiety. So sad is not really where I usually tend to stay in the nervous range.
Yeah.
But yeah, it absolutely, I'm like shocked at how many people in our field, when you mention like, oh, I'm taking this medication, there are so many people before you mention it, you don't realize it. And there are so many people that are like, oh, I take that as well, or I take something similar.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
it's really insane. So the reason that we decided to kind of discuss this topic in the first place is when you're in a position where you have to perform, which let's not kid ourselves, like teaching is a performance industry. Like you have to put a smile on, and in some cases you're an entertainer. You know, you kind of set the mood for the room. So we think that this is something that's really useful for teachers. Now, with that being said, this is a topic that's useful for everybody. I mean, let's be real. This is something that so many people really struggle with. And I know I have spent a good part of my life searching for answers and looking for things that I can do to try to help with it. So just a real quick kind of tidbit about my history with anxiety and depression before we really get into some tips that we can do to try to help with it is I started with it when I was probably about 15. I had my first panic attack. It really came out of nowhere. I had no idea that I had anything going on, and it scared the living bejesus out of me. Like that first panic attack is rough, man. Like you get used to them. Right now, do you get panic attacks often, or just have you had them in the past?
yeah, I had them a lot worse when I was younger. I think as I've gotten older, they've gotten better.
Yeah,
But I've experienced panic attacks as well. And yes, the first one is very terrifying. You don't
it's a doozy,
realize.
man. Like, you know, I'm a hypochondriac, you know, so I worry about my health. So a panic attack, that's just like, it's like perfect. It's the perfect storm to scare me to death. Now that I've got older, you know, when the world starts closing in on me and I lose my breath and I start doing those things, I know what's going on now, right? So I can self-regulate it. But it's terrifying. So I started when I was around 15 with panic attacks. By the time I was 25, it kind of hit a peak, and I'll share more about that here in just a little bit. And I really kind of had my first bout of what I would consider to be pretty serious depression. And then I started searching for answers, and I think through a lot of kind of different strategies and working on things, I managed to get myself now to a position where I still live with it. It's not like it's gone, but it's very manageable. much more than it was at one point. At one point, it was like, okay, this is really interrupting my life on a day-to-day basis, right? So what about you? Would you say that yours has kind of been just sort of steady over the years? Obviously we're brothers. This is genetic. I would imagine for the most part, it's, let's be real. In the world that we live in today, so many people deal with it. So what would you say?
So yeah, no, actually, I think mine would be a little bit the opposite, right? I had pretty bad anxiety and panic attacks and stuff late high school, early college. So those like 18 to 22 range years. Um, I'm on medication for it now because I still do have the anxiety piece,
Yeah.
the worry, the nervousness. But I don't have the panic attacks as much. I haven't had one of those in quite a while. So mine's kind
Mhm.
of went backwards, right? So
Yeah. So today, the goal is to try to be as helpful as we can to as many people. And like I was mentioning earlier, there was a point in my life where I would have done anything for answers. I was searching everywhere to try to find things that would help me or strategies that would help me. So I'm going to encourage people who are listening to this, stick around, listen to this. I don't know if it will, everyone's different. I don't know if it'll help you or not, but if it helps you 1%, if it makes your things 1% better, then it's worth it. And I think that was really kind of a strategy that I kind of realized pretty quick is like, can you be better? Just saying I'm okay is, it's not always the best that you could be. So I encourage you to listen through, see what we have to say about it. And my quick disclaimer, I'm not a therapist, I'm a school teacher, but I've lived with it my entire life and I've dealt with it. And I've found things that work for me, and I hope it can work for you. So if you or someone you know is dealing with it, by all means, please share the podcast with them. Let them listen to this. This is stories that I know a lot of people that I know have probably heard, but I really do hope that it helps people and reaches people that need to hear it. So, all right, let's get started going through our list. Number one on my list, and this is something that I think a lot of people probably do a lot, is the internet, when it comes to anxiety, is your enemy. The internet is not a good place to be. Okay. So, a variety of different reasons. Like I said, I'm a hypochondriac. Okay. I'm going to put this into perspective. Last Tuesday, I noticed a little spot on my back. I was at the dermatologist on Thursday. Like, immediately. I don't mess around, dude. I freak out about things. I still do it. Now, I've got better, but I do freak out about it. By the way, it turned out to be nothing. But I'm searching, Googling, what does this type of mole look like? Huh? Here's melanoma. I'm always kind of searching for those kinds of things. So the internet is your worst enemy. Wes, have you had experiences diving down the rabbit hole that is searching on the internet?
oh, absolutely, absolutely. I have WebMD is. I believe I have been diagnosed with death about 10 times.
Dude, everything's cancer on WebMD.
Everything is cancer.
Everything is cancer.
Yes, yes, it
At this
is.
point, I've had every type of cancer according to WebMD.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that that's a huge one. And not only with hypochondria, but all sorts of other things. You look at like statistics of like car wrecks, and that'll send you into a spiral as well. So, like with
Oh, dude.
generalized anxiety. So yeah, I've definitely went down the rabbit hole that is sitting and Googling for like an hour and looking at like not credible resources.
Dude, before I flew on a plane for the first time, I jumped into some really wild statistics. Now, with that being said, the statistics on plane crashes are they actually didn't hurt me too bad. Like when you realize that if you take a vacation and you fly somewhere, and if you go to the ocean and you swim in the ocean and then you go and you get on a roller coaster and you do all those things, your odds of dying in the plane crash are significantly lower than getting eaten by a shark, dying on the roller coaster, or driving from the airport. Literally. So that didn't hurt my feelings too bad. That actually helps a little bit. But yes, typically speaking, the internet is a dark hole of disaster that you just want to stay out of. Now, there is another caveat to this, and it's not just with Googling things. It's also with social media. What I have found, and one of the things that I've read about in the past, is people, especially in their early 20s, people who are getting their life together and starting their life for really kind of getting to become an adult and we're really living, are really bad to compare themselves to other people on social media, right? And that is something that you have to really be careful of avoiding, because you get into this idea that everyone else is doing better than you are, right? You have to be very careful with that. So realistically, when you look at social media, what do people post on social media? Well, they post the 100% best moments of their life. Oh, they post that they're on vacation. Oh, that's really cool. But they didn't post that they're in miserable credit card debt, right? They posted their picture with their loved one, their sweetheart, their Valentine. But they didn't post that they got into a really bad argument the night before about finances or something else, right? So everyone has something, right? So just because you see all these pictures of people and they're living their best life and you feel insignificant, you have to realize that these are snapshots of the absolute high points of people's lives, and that these people are probably looking at pictures of other people and thinking the same things. Does that make sense?
It does. It does. I will say that I'm not a social media person. I do not scroll on Facebook for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
I'm on Facebook, but like I rarely post. My wife always like makes the joke that like that my Facebook is actually just her Facebook, because it's just literally, if you scroll down, it's just her like tagging me and stuff. So
Yeah, I'm similar, which, I'm not great at social media on a personal level, posting things that about me or whatever. But I will say that having a podcast, it's a little rough because you have to try to engage on social media. So it is something I'm trying to get better at. But absolutely, it's something, avoiding comparing yourselves to other people. I would probably argue, and I don't know if this is statistically correct or not, but young women probably are more in that category, I would imagine. That, so and so's married, I should be married by this age, or I should have children by this age, or I should have bought a house by this age, or whatever. Even though, realistically, everyone lives their own life at their own pace, and there's nothing wrong with it. It's just try not to get caught up in that. There is no rule book on the way that you live your life. So that would be number one. The internet's your enemy. Try not to put too much stock in the internet when it comes to searching for things such as this. Now, this is pretty ironic because the next thing that I found actually came from the internet. Now, it came after many, many moments of searching. And this may be very confusing at first, so bear with me. But number 2, don't be afraid of the pink elephant. I'm going to let you digest that for a second.
Don't be afraid of the pink elephant.
Don't be afraid of the pink elephant. Hey, you've heard me talk about the pink elephant before, right?
I feel like I have, but I don't remember it.
Buddy, we're getting ready to go down the tunnel that is the pink elephant. Okay. So this is I would say a relatively long-winded story, so bear with me if you're listening. I think this is something, though, that many people desperately need to hear, and I'm not joking about that. I think this is something that I know when I was searching for this, I would have gave anything to find this advice. Okay, and I'm just going to go ahead and say this is my absolute number one when it comes to dealing with anxiety. So when I turned 25, I moved to Ohio from Kentucky. And for the first year that I was here, I was unemployed. I was searching for work. And, it was kind of the middle of the school year. I couldn't find work as a teacher at the time. My wife was working in insurance. And I kind of went from John, the teacher, Mr. Howard, the teacher, who I liked introducing myself as that, to John, the unemployed guy who plays video games all day, right? And I didn't like that. I had a lot of insecurity about it. I was dealing with a lot of anxiety, and I was having a lot of intrusive thoughts. So, for those of you who don't know, intrusive thoughts are something that's perfectly normal. We all have intrusive thoughts. So, for example, have you ever been driving down the road and you have this random thought of what if I just whipped over in traffic?
Oh yeah.
Or you're walking along a cliff. What if I just took a step to the left and just fell off? You don't want to, but you just have the thought.
Yeah, you just think
right?
about it. Yeah.
Yeah, it just crosses your mind. Well, in healthy, normal, I don't want to say normal, in healthy individuals whose brain is working the way it should, you have that thought, it crosses through, and it's gone. And that's it. You don't think anything else of it. It just floats on by. But with people with anxiety, you're like a bell that's already been rang, and you're buzzing, right? And when you have a thought like that, in some cases, it can cause you to go into a bit of a fight or flight response, and you freak out, and it doesn't just go away like it does with other people. So one night, I was laying in bed, and I look up in the closet, and there's a pistol in there, and we had got it. I think my dad had gave it to us, and I had this just random thought, like, what if I accidentally, shot myself or something? Just a random thought. And I freaked out. Of course, my mind goes straight to what are you doing? Like, are you like suicidal or something? Why would you even think something like that? Not that I wanted to do it, but it freaked me out. So I stand up, I run outside the bedroom. I'm leaning over the rail, I'm hyperventilating. I walk into the bathroom, I look in the mirror, and the person that I see in the mirror is not me. It doesn't look like me. I feel completely detached from reality. I managed to finally calm down enough to go to sleep. And the next morning I wake up, my wife's gone to work, and I feel numb. I can't feel anything. I can't feel happiness. It feels as though everything that I've ever done has felt this way, and it'll always be this way. It was bizarre. So I freak out again. I call this help hotline. This lady picks up. I'm like, hey, I don't know what's wrong with me. I'm having really weird thoughts. I can't, I'm nervous. And she talks me through it, and she's like, okay, you're fine. You're okay. I get off the phone, and for the next little bit, I can't sleep. I have no appetite. I can't eat. Nothing. I have no enjoyment. Nothing I've ever enjoyed is enjoyable. It's just absolute misery. If someone had came to me and told me, we'll cut off 3 fingers and you'll feel fine again, I would have gladly took it. 100% would have took it. That's how miserable that experience was. So people who are dealing with mental anguish, like, you have my sympathy, because it's awful. So I keep having these thoughts, and they're called, let me see if I can remember what it's called, but it's where you're constantly looping thoughts. You have this constant fear that's rolling through your head over and over and over. So every time I saw a gun on TV, anytime it just randomly popped up in my head, I would freak out. I would have a panic attack over and over and over. And this was happening, I don't know, 20, 30, 40 times a day. It was awful. Ruminating, that's what it's called, ruminating, when you ruminate on something. So eventually I go to the doctor. I talk to him, and he says, I was like, Doc, I don't know what's wrong with me. I keep having these really weird thoughts, and every time I have it, it scares me, and I get panicky and sweaty, and I don't know what's going on. And I'm like, am I suicidal? Like, is that what's going on? And he says, have you written a note? And I said, no, I haven't written a note or anything like that. And he's like, no. He's like, you're not suicidal. He said, you are afraid of becoming suicidal. You have this random fear. And if it wasn't that, it'd be something else. It'd be dogs. It'd be drowning. Something was going to set off. I basically had a nervous breakdown, and something was going to happen that's going to cause this. So I end up going home. He gives me some medicine. It's not doing a whole lot, and I'm still struggling with it. And I'm looking for answers, man. I'm Googling things. I'm doing everything I can, and I finally come across this random little ebook. It's on some tiny little website from God knows where. And I don't even know how much I paid for it, but I would have paid whatever for it. It didn't matter. So I buy this ebook, and finally I start reading about someone who is dealing with something that sounds like me. Everything I'd been reading so far just didn't really sound like what I was dealing with. But I finally find this, and it's about a guy. He's doing the same thing I am. He's going to therapists. He's talking to people. He's trying to find all these answers. And then finally he talks to this doctor, and this doctor says, I think I know how to fix it. And he says, okay, well, what do I need to do? He said, do nothing. And I'm like, whoa, wait, what? Do nothing? That sounds counterproductive. And he says, well, here's the thing. You're terrified of this thought. Whatever this thought is that's running around your head, you find it so disturbing and so unsettling that every time it enters your mind, the first thing you do is try to fight it away. You start trying to push it away, right? And unfortunately, the more you do that, the more your mind will cling to it. And the example he gave was, right now, whatever you do, no matter what you do not think about a pink elephant. Try your absolute best not to think about a pink elephant. Did you think about a pink elephant, Wes?
Absolutely, I actually thought about a pink elephant in a green tutu, but
I mean, let's be more specific here.
yeah,
Yeah, you think about the pink elephant.
yeah,
And the more that you try to fight anxiety, right? The more you try to push it away, the stronger it becomes. Okay? So his advice to this guy was, treat your thoughts like they're clouds. Let it be there. Let it exist with you. Tell it it's okay. Give your brain and your mind permission to think about whatever it wants, and tell yourself that those thoughts are only thoughts and they can't hurt you. And you treat them like clouds. You let it float on by. You don't judge yourself. You don't judge the thought. And eventually, after a lot of practice and a lot of this, your brain will eventually say, oh, it must not be that important. And it lets it go. And when it lets it go, suddenly it's like it was never there to begin with. Now I see guns on TV. I have thoughts random. It doesn't bother me at all now. It's bizarre. So what I would start doing is I would do a lot of meditation. I would lay down in bed. I would close my eyes, and I would spend 10 minutes or so just letting my brain run. I would let it go as wild as it wanted. I didn't force it to go in any direction. I just relaxed and let it go. And occasionally you'd have moments of like, oh, that doesn't feel particularly good, because when you have anxiety, you get adrenaline, and adrenaline causes a lot of these really negative, horrible thoughts. So you just kind of let it run, and eventually it runs out of gas. It just says, okay, I'm done, and it quits. And additionally, you go and you go out and you live your life. You do things that you would normally enjoy. It's kind of like fake it until you make it. You go out and you do things you would normally enjoy, and it's going to suck. And you're going to be like, I'm not enjoying this. I still feel crappy. But the more and more you do it, the more and more you begin to release and let it go, and eventually it gets better. So that's how you get over one of these really, really bad episodes. But for about 6 months or longer, the only time that I could feel anything was when I was angry. When I was really angry, I could feel anger, but I couldn't feel joy, really. I couldn't look forward to things. It was just miserable. And this is ultimately kind of what got me through it. So, Wes, have you ever been caught up on something in your head where it's like, I can't stop thinking about this thing that I'm worried about. It won't go away.
Yeah, not to that extreme that you shared, but I mean, I get caught up in thoughts that'll last a while. A big one is like car wrecks. That's a big one for me. I'll get like super fixated on like my wife is going to get into a car wreck, and I'll think about it and think about it and think about it for a while. But like you do, I kind of let it pass, or I let that thought pass, but sometimes it gets stuck in there for quite some time. But yeah, I mean, letting things just let it happen is kind of the advice I actually gave to my wife, who also had a panic attack. Like when we first met in college, she was having a panic attack. I was like, just let it happen, and she thought that was the craziest advice. But like the more you fight it, the worse off it is. So
Mm-hmm.
letting those thoughts run their course, letting your body do the natural reaction to it is definitely a good piece of advice.
Thinking I'm going to just defeat anxiety and never be nervous or never have a panic or never, like, that's not realistic. But when you accept that it's part of you, it's in your life. Like,
Hmm.
this is part of you. It's not you. It's not your identity. It's not what defines you, but it is there, right? And if
Hmm.
you give it permission to be there and you're okay with it and you give it space, then it's easier to deal with. So what you was just talking about with the car accident thing, it reminds me of a little parable that I heard one time, and it's all dealing with worry. Like, why do we worry? What's the point of worrying, right? So there was this lady. This is just a little figurative story. There's this lady. She walks around her house over and over and over. Do you know the story I'm getting ready to tell?
Yes, I do. I do know this one.
So there's a lady. She walks around her house over and over and over, and she does it so much that she actually digs a ditch around her house from walking so much. Eventually, the neighbor comes over and he says, "Lady, what are you doing?" And she says, "I'm protecting my house from tigers." And he says, "Protecting your house from tigers? Lady, your house has never been attacked by a tiger." And she says, "Exactly." Right. So what we do is when we worry and we constantly worry, we reward our brain for worrying. We tell our brain that but the bad thing hasn't happened because we worry, right? In reality, your house would have never been attacked by tigers had you just stayed in the house, right? Had you just lived your life and enjoyed your life. Now, that's not to say that you don't take precautions. That's not to say that you don't do common sense things. But it's, you have to be careful about getting out of the realm of what's reasonable or rational, right?
Hmm.
So that's what it kind of reminded me of. You can think about your wife getting in a car accident all day, every day, and worry yourself sick. But if it's just one of those things that, if it's going to happen, it just is going to happen. There's not really a whole lot you can do about it outside of say, hey, take your time, be careful, wear your seatbelt.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Hmm.
So, yeah, absolutely. The pink elephant, people, don't be afraid of your thoughts. Let it go. In the words of the great, was it Elsa? Which one is it?
Elsa.
Whichever one it is.
Yeah,
It's
that is
Elsa.
Elsa that sings "Let It Go."
There we go.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So in the words of the great, legendary Elsa, let it go.
Hmm.
So
The snow
so
never
that's number
bothered me
two.
anyway.
Never
Yep.
bothered me anyway. Nope,
No.
not a bit. So just real quick before we continue and we get to that last thing that we're going to kind of discuss for number three, I want to give a really quick shout out. We had a really cool review that was actually posted on, I think it was on iTunes. It was on Apple Podcast, and it was a teacher. Apparently, they had posted, said they really liked the content. They liked the podcast. They've been teaching for 24 years. And we just wanted to give a really quick shout out to you and say thank you so much for that shout out. It really meant the world to us, and it kind of helps validate that what we're doing is useful. And we hope that you continue to listen, and we really appreciate it. So on to number three. I had written this in a way that it sounds like it's being redundant, but it's really not. Accept that you have anxiety, talk about it, and then also understand that there's nothing wrong with getting help. There's nothing wrong with being on medicine. There's nothing wrong with, cognitive behavioral therapy. There's nothing wrong with talking to a therapist. There's nothing wrong with any of those things. This stigma of mental health and anxiety, try not to think what's wrong with me, and compare yourself to everyone else walking around thinking, why is their life so good? When in reality, they're probably dealing with it a great deal too. Once I reached a certain point, and I'd been working for a handful of years at this point, I went to the doctor for something unrelated. I don't remember. It was like my back was hurting or something, and she asked me about anxiety, and I was like, "Yep, I got plenty of that." So she has me take the little. Have you ever you taken the test where they make you mark 1 through 5 how bad you are?
Oh yeah.
Buddy, I maxed that thing out. She handed me. I'm like, I'm reading. I'm like, oh, that's a 5. Well, yeah, that's also a 5. So I just maxed that thing. It was 1 through 10, 1 through 5, whatever it is. So I just maxed that thing out. So she ends up putting me on Zoloft. Now I know that different people have different reactions to different medications, right? Like what works for me may not work for someone else. I've spoke to people personally who just do not like Zoloft, like at all.
Mm-hmm.
But she ends up putting me on Zoloft, and after a month or two, I realized that okay, yeah, this has really helped me. It made a huge difference in my life, and I go back and I'm like, hey, that actually really helped. And she's like, well, do you think you could be better? And I'm like, well, I don't know. Like I'm doing pretty good. She's like, well, I put you on a really low dose, so I may bump you just to see. Like, do you think you could be better? I'm like, well, let's try it. Like, I always want to be better.
Want to be better. Yeah, let's go.
Yeah. So she puts me on a bigger dose, and yeah, I think it helped. It definitely, it really just takes the edge off of my nerves. Right. I don't get caught up on things near as easily. Being on medicine. Now I know people who have been on Zoloft and is like, nope, because Zoloft, if you don't know, has some very interesting side effects. For one, for people who don't normally dream, like if you're the type of person who goes to sleep and you dream, you just go to sleep and you wake up, you don't really dream a lot. Zoloft causes you to have very strange, vivid dreams. Now, I've always dreamed vivid dreams anyway, so it really wasn't a big change for me.
That's that rider in you, you always got them vivid dreams going on.
So those wild imagination.
Yeah.
But I always dreamed anyway, so it wasn't a problem for me. But for some people, and what she told me, the doctor told me, she said, yeah, you'll go to sleep and you'll see like your dead relatives and all that, and not in a bad way or anything. I'm like, well, okay, we'll try it. But it helped me. But I know other people that was like, nope, that made me a mess. So I know that you take the same thing as me. Do you have like pretty vivid dreams?
Actually, yeah, I do. I do. I'm used to not have as vivid, so that would make sense that since I've been on it, now I'm on a lower dosage than you, I believe, but I did have the same experience where I went to the doctor and they were like, hey, like, how's it going? I'm like, it's going pretty good. They're like, well, we're going to up it and see how it goes. And I was like, okay, and it's going real good now. But, I was actually meaning to tell you this the other day, but why not tell you on a podcast? I had a dream the other night that I was in our grandmother, Pansy Ma's living room, sitting there, and I was talking to her. Now, for people who do not know us, our grandmother, I was very young when she developed Alzheimer's, to the point where I did not know her prior to that. But like, she was talking to me and having a conversation, and it was very, very strange. So,
it's bizarre how that can happen. You can have conversations and actually see people in dreams that you really didn't know before, or that well. Did I tell you about the dream that I had about being in the military?
I don't think so.
Dude, okay, so I had a dream that painted me as both a wuss and like negligent.
Yes, so, you did tell me about this, but I cannot wait to hear it again.
I gotta share it with everybody. So I had a dream that I had somehow got enlisted in special forces, and we're going from room to room in this little like barracks type place, and we're going into this drug compound where there's more than likely going to be a shootout, and I'm freaking out. I'm like, oh my God, I got to find a way to keep from getting shot. Like there's no respawn in RL. I kept thinking that, like, you're just history. So I'm trying to get my stuff together, and we're getting on bulletproof vests and getting our guns ready and everything. And then we go out and we get in this Black Hawk helicopter and we take off and we're flying to this compound, and I'm looking around. There's this really intimidating captain with us. He's like yelling at everybody. And there's a few other soldiers with me. And I look around and they're all getting their guns ready, and they're like loading with ammo, and they're checking their stuff. And I realized at that point that the guns didn't come preloaded, and I hadn't brought any ammo. So I'm like, wait, the guns aren't already loaded? They're like, you didn't bring any ammo, you moron. And I'm like, I didn't know. I thought that they already had ammo in them. So we have to turn the Black Hawk helicopter around.
And this one guy didn't come to bear. We call off the mission. Abort.
So we had to turn around just to go back and get me some ammo. So I don't know if I told you this, but we eventually did get to the drug compound, and literally none of them were home. So we just managed to go in and just get everything. Like everything we needed to do.
What do you mean everything? You mean like the drugs?
I think we were like confiscating drugs. Like that. I think that.
Wouldn't the point be to arrest the people at the drug?
No. Hey, dude, listen. I wasn't in charge of the mission. I just did what I was told. I don't know. I'm a teacher for a reason, dude.
All right, I love it.
So yeah, that was a strange one. But if you want to have dreams like that,
if you want to forget your ammo and talk to dead relatives.
Talk to dead relatives. Let me tell you,
maybe for you.
Yeah, really ignore all the other side effects it may have. Upset stomach. Sound like I'm going into Pepto-Bismol at this point.
Yeah, really? Oh,
okay. So I think that takes us through 1 through 3. Just to kind of really quick recap, make sure that you do not surf the internet. You know, it's nice to laugh about it. In a lot of cases, if you can't just laugh about things, then, you know, what are you doing? You just, it's hard to live with things if you can't laugh about it. The first one, internet is your enemy. Try to stay off of that. Number 2, don't be afraid of the pink elephant. Remember, your thoughts are just thoughts. You know, obviously I understand that there are situations where people are depressed, that people do have things like suicidal thoughts. Talk to people, you know, talk to a professional. You know, obviously you don't want something that's serious to fester and turn into something worse. But at the end of the day, remember that fears in most cases are just fears, right? And then lastly, accept that you have anxiety. Don't fight it. And then if you need to get on medicine, it doesn't make you any less of a person. You're still awesome. You're doing great. Just keep it up, right? So I think this will about wrap it up for this one. This is episode 9. On episode 10 coming up next week, we will have a special guest on. Brian Hershey is going to be coming on and talking to us about teacher burnout. Why are so many teachers leaving the field? We'll introduce him. We'll talk more about him next week. I hope you guys have a great, fantastic week.
Wait,
and
we will
see you
talking to
next
us about
time.
Hershey Kisses?
I'm sure he's never heard that joke before. But anyways, I hope that everyone has a fantastic week, and we will see you next time on Brothers on the Board. Have a great week.